Welcome to the Digital Identity Digest, the audio companion to the blog at Spherical Cow Consulting. I'm Heather Flanagan, and every week I break down interesting topics in the field of digital identity, from credentials and standards to browser weirdness and policy twists. If you work with digital identity but don't have time to follow every specification or hype cycle, you're in the right place. Let's get into it. In the previous post in this series about discovery, I looked at identity discovery inside structured systems like federations and consumer IAM platforms, metadata documents, wallets, credentials. Those systems can be pretty complicated, sometimes painfully so, but at least they usually know that there is a discovery problem to solve. A user needs an identity provider, a client needs metadata, a verifier needs a credential. The details may be messy, but the systems at least have some idea of what they're trying to match. Now, your personal digital life is a lot messier. Over time, we create accounts, we reuse identifiers, connect social logins, save credentials, authorize apps, start subscriptions, abandon services, all these things and forget what we did. We try a new productivity tool. I might be guilty of that one. We create an account to download a white paper. We sign into a new conference app. We use Google Login one day, Apple Login the next, and a email and password account the time after that, because apparently consistency was too much to ask of future us. We link a payment card, we authorize a mobile app, we agree to terms of services, we do all these things and we promptly forget that we did anything at all. Now, while we are still present, that mess is inconvenient. When someone else has to reconstruct it after incapacity or death, it becomes a much harder problem of authority, access, and trust. If you're actually internal to a company and trying to figure out what all the paths were, it's a very similar problem in its own way, right? And that's the discovery problem this post is about. Not discovery inside a clean protocol flow, but account discovery in the wild. This is less about governed matching and more about archaeology. Most of us do not create our digital lives according to a plan, right? We accumulate them. The result is a personal digital estate long before anyone thinks of using the word estate. You might call it your digital footprint. Some of it's obvious. You've got your email accounts, your financial services, social media profiles, cloud storages, messaging apps, streaming services, shopping accounts, healthcare portals, travel documents, so much. Some of it's less obvious, though. You've got old forums, loyalty programs, abandoned blogs, newsletter platforms, school systems, professional associations, your smart home devices, your gaming profiles, that SaaS trial you absolutely meant to cancel before it was billed annually. Hypothetically speaking, I wouldn't know about that much. The tricky part is that accounts are not always created in a way that feels important at the time. The threshold for account creation is low because platforms want it that way. Sign up to save your preferences, sign up to complete checkout, sign up to join the community. None of that's inherently bad. Accounts can make services much more useful because they support personalization, security, continuity, and portability within a service. But the long-term effect is that people build this sprawling set of identity relationships across platforms that were designed to support engagement, not personal inventory management. The account may be very easy to create, but remembering that it exists 5 years later is a completely different matter. When people try to find old accounts, they very rarely start from a clean list. They start with fragments. They may search their inboxes for welcome or verify your email or reset password or subscription or your account. They check their password managers because, of course, everybody's using password managers, right? They look at their browser-saved passwords. They scan App Store subscriptions. They review recurring charges on payment cards. They look at connected apps in Google and Apple and Facebook and GitHub or whatever platform acts as their identity provider the moment they clicked continue with. They search their old phones if they still have them. They search cloud backups if they have them. They look at domain renewals. They follow trails of notifications, invoices, and sort of vague memories. None of this is an account inventory. These are the fragments we use to construct one. Now, password managers, which we love, and I know everybody's using them, do get closest and are absolutely essential, right? They give people a place to store the credentials, identify reused passwords, which you shouldn't be using, and sometimes assess password health. But a password manager only knows what was saved. It may not know about passkeys stored elsewhere, or accounts created through social login, or accounts tied to old work addresses, or accounts that use magic links. or apps that are authenticating through OAuth, or services where the password reset flow is only the only remaining clue, right? Browser saved credentials have similar limits, only with more chaos and perhaps fewer life choices that I would recommend defending in public because I don't think browser saved credentials are a good idea. But I digress. So, email is often the richest source because email tends to preserve transactional traces. The problem is that email is also a landfill when it comes to search, right? It may contain the welcome message, the receipt, the password reset, the suspicious login alert, the subscription renewal, and the final notice before account deletion. It may also contain 10,000 other messages from organizations that have mistaken a customer relationship for a permission to test the outer limits of human patience by sending you so much email. Still, for many people, the inbox is the closest thing they have to a personal account registry. That should make us a little uncomfortable because it means one of the primary ways people discover the accounts they have created is by searching through an uncontrolled archive of communications from organizations that may or may not have used meaningful subject lines. We've built a digital world where account discovery often depends on whether someone can remember the right search term. But then there's the grimly useful category, and that's breach data. Have I been pwned? And similar breach notification services can reveal that an email address appeared in a compromised data set. That's genuinely useful. A breach notification may remind someone of an account they forgot they had, an old service they should close, or a password they reused somewhere else because apparently past me continues to make poor life choices that impact present and future me. But someone leaked it is a terrible account inventory strategy. Breach derived discovery is discovery after failure happens. It tells you that an account or an identifier may have existed in a compromised context. It does not tell you whether the account is still active, whether the data is current, whether the service still exists, whether the account was yours or created fraudulently, or whether the password was reused somewhere more damaging. It is useful because the rest of the ecosystem is so bad at helping people maintain awareness of their own accounts. So that's kind of a recurring pattern in this series. When proper discovery mechanisms are absent, people build workarounds out of whatever evidence remains. Sometimes that evidence is clean metadata documents, sometimes it's a password fault, sometimes it's an inbox, sometimes it's a breach. Yay for modern life. Now, if this were only a usability problem, the answer might be pretty simple. Let's make accounts easier to find. Let users enter an email address and see every account tied to it. Let them search across platforms. Let them discover all the connected apps, subscriptions, identifiers, and recovery channels from just one place. Lovely idea. And also, please enjoy your new attack surface. A system that helps the rightful user rediscover an account may also help an attacker discover that the account exists. Account enumeration is not a theoretical attack, right? Password reset flows, login error messages, recovery prompts, and find my account features can all leak information if designed poorly. If a service confirms that an email address has an account, that that may very well be useful to the account holder, but it may also be useful to a stalker, a scammer, a credential stuffer, or anyone building a profile of someone's online life. The same problem shows up with social login and connected apps. The person may want to know which services are connected to their Google, Apple, Facebook, Microsoft, or GitHub accounts. That's reasonable, but exposing those relationships too broadly can reveal professional affiliations, political activity, health relationships, financial interests, or communities that someone never actually intended to make visible. Account recovery has the same tension. Recovery must be usable enough for legitimate users and resistant enough to keep attackers out. Your old phone numbers, your stale email addresses, your compromised inboxes, your shared devices, your weak customer service processes all turn discovery and recovery into security questions. This is the same lesson from the identity discovery post, only a lot messier, right? Findability is not always good. In identity systems, the useful goal is often conditional findability, findable by the right party for the right reasons at the right moment and within the right limits. The other problem with treating all of this as purely account discovery is that the account is often only the door. I mean, at the end of the day, if you think about it, you only want to find the accounts because you want to know what's behind it. The old email account may contain family photos or legal records or domain registrations or financial notices. A cloud storage account may contain creative work or business documents or tax records or medical files. A social media profile may be a public identity, could be a private archive, could be a professional presence, could be a memorial waiting to happen, right? Your playlist, your photo albums, your game accounts, your digital wallets, your whole device ecosystem may look trivial to one person and carry deep emotional, financial, or cultural value to another. And this is where the digital estate framing becomes useful, though I don't want I don't want you to think this post is about digital estate law or anything like that. In the white paper that I co-authored, The Unfinished Digital Estate, and there's a link to that from the written blog post, we argued that digital life now extends well beyond lifespans and includes far more than bank accounts and crypto wallets. Emails, shared photos, creative works, credentials, playlists, all of these can form part of what outlives a person. And that matters for discovery because the thing we know how to name may be less important than the thing it contains. Find My Old Account sounds straightforward until you realize that's not actually what you're looking for. You're looking for photographs, you're looking for contracts, you're looking for private messages or tax documents or the credentials needed to access other accounts. The account is the door, but the digital life is behind it. And then everything changes when the user can't participate, right? When the account holder is alive and able to act, forgotten account discovery is annoying, incomplete, and surprisingly revealing when done wrong. But the person can still authenticate, can still search and reset and confirm and revoke and make a decision. May not enjoy the process. And they may say very unkind things about past versions of themselves, but they can still participate. After incapacitation or death, the discoverer changes because it may become a spouse or an adult child or an executor, a fiduciary, a caregiver, a business partner, a trustee, a court appointed representative. That person may have emotional urgency or legal authority, practical responsibility, or all three. They may need to find financial assets, they may need to close subscriptions, preserve photos, notify communities, manage business accounts, prevent fraud, and they may have no idea where to start. So that's where the digital estate problem becomes a discovery problem in the very sharpest sense. What accounts exist? Which ones matter? Which contain assets, obligations, memories, or risks? Which recovery channels still work? What platforms offer legacy tools? Which require a death certificate? Which require a court order? Which refuse access altogether? Which accounts are actually protected by multi factor authentication tied to a phone that no one can unlock? What credentials are in a password manager that no one can access? Legal authority and technical access are not the same thing. A will can absolutely name an executor, but it cannot unlock a phone or decrypt a password manager, satisfy MFA, or recover a private key, or make every platform recognize the same authority model. A death certificate can prove someone died. It does not provide a complete inventory of the accounts they created, right? A court order may help with one platform and be irrelevant or insufficient or slow for another. And that gap is where families and fiduciaries get stuck. Now, some platforms have tools for this. Google has an active account manager. Facebook has memorialization and legacy contact features. Apple has legacy contact. Password managers may offer emergency access or account recovery mechanisms. These tools are better than nothing, and people should absolutely know they exist, but they are not a discovery layer for a person's digital life. They are a fragment. Platform tools are platform specific by design. They help with the account or ecosystems they control, but they do not tell an executor what exists, what subscriptions are active, what social logins were connected, what domains are expiring, what files are business critical, or what accounts are recoverable only through another email account. They also vary in what they allow, right? A legacy contact may be able to retrieve some data, but not messages or credentials or payment information or content protected by separate security boundaries. So that white paper I mentioned makes that point pretty clearly that current technical tools are inconsistent, incomplete, and largely proprietary. And even the more mature tools operate within very narrow platform boundaries. Apple's Legacy Contact, for example, does not grant access to credentials stored in Apple Passwords applications, which means it may not help a legacy contact discover and manage the many other accounts those credentials could unlock. Limitation absolutely makes sense from a security standpoint. It is also a practical discovery problem. The very protections that keep accounts safe during life may make them impossible to identify or manage after death unless the person planned ahead. And again, the answer cannot be, well, just make everything accessible, because that would be a disaster. The answer is to recognize that the digital estate recovery requires intentional delegation, clear authority, auditability, revocation where appropriate, and usable planning tools before a crisis. Such a small ask, tiny, it's barely anything. Now, before I want to wrap this up, there's one other side observation from a different setting that I want to make, right? Individuals are not actually the only ones trying to reconstruct a digital trail from fragments. Organizations also have the same problem from the inside, that sometimes when they're being asked to reconstruct things, they don't know how. At RSAC 2026, which is a very large cybersecurity conference, I attended a session on privacy investigations from the perspective of the investigators. It was an example built around a misconfigure website tracking scenario. They were talking about sensitive health information being sent to third-party advertisers. And they went through the kinds of questions that they asked to figure out what was going on. And so much of that investigation was discovery work. They were asking what third-party tags are present, what data elements are being disclosed. Is the consent mechanism actually preventing tracking before opt-in? Is the client moving client side, server side, or both? Is information only going to the first level service provider, or is the second or third level entity doing something unexpected? Now, this session was about privacy enforcement, not digital estate planning, but the connection's kind of interesting, right? Digital systems create relationships faster than people can document them. A marketing team will add a tag, a product team will enable the integration, a consent banner is configured one way, a tracker behaves another, and employee turnover quietly removes the human memory of why anything was set up the way it was. So when these investigators come in and ask, what exists, where does it go, who receives it, and what did we promise user, it's a really interesting question to ask because all of that is discovery too. It's operational discovery perhaps, but it is still discovery. Before an organization can govern data flows, update disclosures, honor consent preferences, or respond to regulators, it has to know what is actually happening and what they did. Before an individual can close accounts or revoke access or preserve assets or make plans, they have to know what exists. Symmetry here isn't perfect, but I think it's really interesting in some useful ways. The hard truth is that personal digital life discovery currently depends entirely too much on individual discipline and platform-specific luck. People are expected to keep track of accounts they created over decades across changing devices, email addresses, phone numbers, identity providers, password managers, and social login options. Organizations are expected to honor preferences and privacy promises across dynamic data flows that they may not fully understand. Families are expected to manage digital remains through tools that were never designed to work together. I mean, it's no wonder the result is pretty messy. The practical lesson is not that everyone needs the perfect spreadsheet of every account they have ever created, though it certainly wouldn't hurt. The better lesson is that personal digital life does need a more intentional inventory, delegation, and recovery planning than most of us currently give it. Password managers help. Account cleanups helps. Reviewing connected apps help. Setting platform legacy contacts help. Documenting important account helps. So does thinking about, which accounts matter financially, emotionally, professionally, or legally. But the larger point here is structural, right? Platforms have spent years making account creation easy. They've spent far less time helping people understand the long-term identity relationships that they are creating. The imbalance becomes pretty visible when people try to clean up their own accounts, and it becomes painful when someone else has to do it for them. Personal account discovery shows what happens when identity relationships accumulate faster than the systems for managing them. Digital estate discovery shows what happens when those relationships outlive the person who created them. And the discovery problem does not end when the user can no longer log in. In many ways, that's when it just becomes absolutely impossible to ignore. So the next post, because there's one more, moves from people trying to discover accounts and authority to software discovering agents, endpoints, tools, and capabilities. You've had different actors, but you got a lot of the same uncomfortable questions. Who gets to find what, under what authority, and with what consequences? Thanks for listening. Talk to you next week. And that's it for this week's episode of the Digital Identity Digest. If it helps make things a little clearer, or at least a little more interesting, share it with a friend or colleague, and connect with me on LinkedIn at HL Flanagan. And if you enjoyed the show, do be sure to subscribe and leave me a rating and review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to podcasts. You can also find the written full post at sphericalcowconsulting.com. Now stay curious, stay engaged, and let's get these conversations going.